Hello everyone, Tom with Capo Fetish. Today on the channel we're going to talk about our favorite prog albums from the 1970s. It's been a very hot day today in Moorpark, California in Ventura County. It has reached a scorching 107 degrees. I'm sweating even with the air on. We never get this kind of weather here. This is just bizarre. So anyway, we're going to push on through. When I'm done here, let me know what your favorite 10 prog albums from the 70s are in the comments section. Let's start off here with my number 10. Debut album from band National Health. This is a band from the Canterbury scene. Features three former members of the band, Hatfield and the North, another Canterbury band. We have Dave Stewart on organ and electric piano. We have Phil Miller on guitar, who's just absolutely phenomenal guitarist. Pip Pyle on drums. And then we have Neil Murray on bass. The icing on the cake, though, for me on this album is vocalist Amanda Parsons. She sings in this she was on the first two Hatfield and the North albums, by the way. She sings in this very ethereal type of singing style. She's not scatting or anything. It's more of a non-lexical vocable style, kind of laws, adding this kind of just heavenly ethereal kind of vibe, which just really makes this album just incredible. So some of the highlights on this album for me would be Tenemos Roads, the opening track, and the closing track called Elephants. It's all very accessible. They're not meandering tracks like a lot of prog rock is. Everything's very memorable and melodic, but very, very complex as well. Just a fantastic record. They had 3 albums. This is my favorite of theirs. The debut from National Health from 1978. Speaking of the Canterbury scene, another just absolute milestone from that whole period. 1971's In the Land of Grey and Pink from Caravan, featuring lead vocalist Richard Sinclair, who would also form Hatfield and the North. And a few years after he left this band, this was just one of those just perfect early prog records, starting with Golf Girl. The highlight for me, though, is the 22-minute and 40-second 9 Feet Underground, which goes through all these different sections. Kind of like Supper's Ready from Foxtrot Genesis. Maybe not as extreme, but yeah, it's just a real great journey, that particular track. This is a 2001 reissue on CD. Has 5 great bonus tracks on here, too. One called I Don't Know His Name. I Don't Know Its Name. Another one called Aristocracy. There's some really, really great bonus tracks on here. I love this album. It has just such a cool vibe. Great headphone listen. Coming in at number 9, Caravans in the Land of Grey and Pink. Coming in at number 8 is the second album from Mahavishnu Orchestra, the album Birds of Fire from 1973. I love their first album, The Inner Mounting Flame, but I really dig this album the most. I remember there was a period in high school where I was just playing this nonstop. That title track, the way it kicks in, just getting more intense and intense by the second. With John McLaughlin coming in with these just rip-roaring kind of like bending string kind of leads. Fantastic. The second track with Jan Hammer on organ, electric piano, Miles Beyond is fantastic. Then we've got a really cool track called Thousand Island Park, and then side one ends with Hope. Just really kind of a nice variation here. They're not really settling on one vibe. There's a lot of different vibes going on in this album. Side 2 has this track that's almost kind of borderline folky country called Open Country Joy, which I really like. And then the whole album is fantastic. One Word, Sanctuary is great, and then it ends with Resolution. Perfect ending to a perfect album. Came out in 1973. Of course, the instrumentation on here is just unparalleled, right? Billy Cobham on drums, Jan Hammer on keyboards, John McLaughlin. I mean, it's just an incredible array of musicians here. And of course, the violin playing by Jerry Goodman. Interspersing with John McLaughlin's guitar playing, just that whole back and forth, them playing together. It's just really, nothing really sounds like it. So yeah, coming in at number 8, Birds of Fire from Mahavishnu Orchestra on my top 10 prog rock albums. Coming in at number 7 is Procol Harum's Exotic Birds and Fruit from 1974. This is kind of the end of the golden period of Procol Harum albums. Just a fantastic record from start to finish. Starting with Nothing But the Truth, Beyond the Pale, one of their greatest tracks. As Strong as Samson, that vocal from Gary Brooker, as always, just so soulful. That melody is so incredible. Ends with The Idol on side 1, just another just epic Procol Harum track. Side 2, The Thin End of the Wedge, Monsignor Armand, Fresh Fruit, which kind of has kind of a Love and Spoonful vibe to it. Butterfly Boys, New Lamps for Old, ending side 2. This is just a near perfect album and one of their best later period albums. I'm not even including the reunion albums. I'm talking about their original discography. But yeah, just a classic Procol Harum album here, start to finish. Exotic Birds and Fruit from 1974. Coming in at number 6 is one of my favorite Traffic albums, John Barleycorn Must Die from 1970. This is damn near perfect as well. Side 3 just flows amazing. Starting off the instrumental Glad. Then you go into Freedom Rider, and then you have Empty Pages. Absolute perfection. Then side 2, you've got Stranger to Himself. My favorite track on the album, John Barleycorn. Just an incredible folk epic song. And then Every Mother's Son. I think it's just, there's 6 songs on here, and they're all stellar. So this album, along with the Mr. Fantasy album, probably are my 2 favorite Traffic albums. That second Traffic album is pretty good too, the self-titled, but I've always thought this one really had a magical quality to it, and it has a really great flow. So this is coming in at number 6, Traffic's John Barleycorn Must Die from 1970. All right, top 5, an absolute classic, absolute masterpiece, Close to the Edge by Yes, came out in 1972. I think it was about 10 years ago, I saw Yes perform this album and Fragile in their entirety at the Greek Theater in LA. It was just really cool. They did a little break in between both albums. To me, though, this was the highlight of the show, though. Hearing the full-on Close to the Edge, the full side-long track. And You and I has always been a personal Yes favorite. There's something really emotional about that ending of that song. It always kind of brings a tear to my eye. I've always loved that track. Siberian Catru is just perfect too. This is what you call a one of those just monumental progressive rock albums from the 70s that everybody should have in their collection. Everybody is just on fire on this album, and I still am just perplexed on how they put Close to the Edge together. I'm sure there was a lot of splicing going on and editing, but it all flows really well. And I think along with Supper's Ready by Genesis, and Held Twas in I by Procol Harum, and Close to the Edge, those are 3 of the most epic prog rock tunes of all time that are just, almost side-long tracks. So coming in at number 5, Close to the Edge by Yes from 1972. There's a Yes album I like even more than Close to the Edge, though, and that is the Yes album. This is coming in at number 4 for me. This came out in 1971. This is the first time I ever heard of Yes. I remember when my brother brought this album home. God, I was probably about 5 or 6 years old. I always remember tripping out on this album cover with these like mannequin heads, like, just resting on the shoulder of, I think, is that Patrick Moraz there, the keyboardist? I'm not sure, but anyway, love the cover. The back cover is kind of freaky and weird. I just think this has some of the most like compact, greatest Yes songs. First off, Starship Trooper is just one of the greatest prog rock tunes of all time, no matter how many times you've listened to it. That outro with that guitar from Steve Howe, kind of reminiscent of that kind of like hypnotic feel that the Beatles did in I Want You, She's So Heavy. I like too how he starts playing the solo. He doesn't go on forever and it just kind of fades out. But there's something really hypnotic about that rhythm guitar part at the end. I just have always loved that midsection with the acoustic guitar with him, with John Anderson and Chris Squire doing that harmonizing. It's just absolute masterpiece of a track. Of course, you have Yours Is No Disgrace. I remember I saw Yes and Procol Harum together probably about 15 years ago at the Universal Amphitheater. I remember they opened with Yours Is No Disgrace. That was great. You got The Clap, which is a great little acoustic piece right in the middle there of the side 1. Of course, you have I've Seen All Good People, huge track, played a lot on the radio. A Perpetual Change is one of my favorites on the track, on the album that ends the album. And then Adventure, I just think it's just one of those just magical albums. It's just fantastic. They haven't really gone into that whole period yet where they're just, just going off and it's just meandering and stuff. These are really tight compositions, really well constructed. I love it. Love it. Yes album for me coming in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 is one of my all-time favorite albums in general, not only in prog rock, but just in general, is Selling England by the Pound by Genesis. This is what you call just an absolute masterpiece of an album from start to finish. Peter Gabriel is one of Peter Gabriel's highlights of being in that band. Dancing with the Moonlit Night, incredible. I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe is just so, it's just theatrical. And it features, you know, Peter Gabriel in one of his many chameleon voices. The way it starts off with the lawnmower and the whole thing about it. It's just, I just love it. Firth the Fifth with that piano, that opening piano by Tony Banks is just gorgeous. And then that amazing, you know, very atmospheric solo from Steve Hackett in the middle. Just can't beat it. And then you've got More Fool Me, which kind of shows where Phil would be going years down the line. He could definitely hold his own. It's kind of more like an intermission, that song, before side 2 starts, the epic side 2. Starting with the Battle of Epping Forest, just a lot of more characters thrown out there by Peter Gabriel. A lot of different voices, and a lot of vocals going on in this song. A lot of vocals, a lot of phrasing, wild phrasing. You got After the Ordeal, a fantastic little instrumental, and then of course the epic cinema show ending the album, and then it ending with that little coda at the end, the Isle of Plenty. This is what you call a perfect prog rock album, one of the best prog rock albums of all time. Have you heard of the band called the Musical Box? They're a Canadian Genesis tribute act, and they play periodically throughout the U.S., and I've seen them perform this album in its entirety 2 or 3 times now, and they are the best tribute act I've ever seen in my life. They've got everything down to a T. They've had the blessing from Peter Gabriel to use all the props and all the costumes and everything, and they just got every note and every movement Peter Gabriel did during this era down to a T. I highly suggest seeing the Musical Box if you've never seen them. They are absolutely stunning, and I've seen them perform this album about 3 times, and it's just perfection. Speaking of Genesis, one of my absolute favorite albums of all time, an album that I've been obsessed with for 40 plus years, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, coming in at number 2 for me. Peter Gabriel saying this is kind of a Pilgrim's Progress kind of type of story, and I agree about finding yourself. That's really what it's about, in kind of a surreal manner. Side 1 and side 2 for me are the most perfect sides of Genesis. The songs just flow into one another perfectly. The opening track, the title track, is absolute perfection. It sounds like cinema. It sounds like going to the cinema, flying a windshield, in the cage, the Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging. That whole side 1 is just cocoon, all of it absolutely perfect. Back in New York City, featuring these balls to the wall vocals by Peter Gabriel. And what's that one tune that comes after it? Hairless Heart is gorgeous, that instrumental. Counting Out Time. What's the track after that? We got Counting Out Time, The Carpet Crawlers, one of the most gorgeous songs. And then the Chamber of 32 Doors is just gorgeous. I mean, just perfect side 1 and 2. And then side 3 and 4 are more the theatrical sides. Probably worked way more effectively in a live setting. Again, a few years ago, I saw the Musical Box perform this in its entirety, and it was just magic, just absolute magic. They played some theater in LA. I forgot what the name was, what it was, but it was just an amazing performance, and they had it down just to a T. And I think sides 3 and 4 especially worked really well live. There's so many great tracks too, like Anyway on side 3. Silent Sorrow and Empty Boats is a fantastic kind of sound collage. The Colony of Slippermen, Ravine, The Light Lays Down on Broadway. And when do you ever hear like an uplifting ending to an epic prog rock album like It? Fantastic ending to an amazing record. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway from Genesis, coming in at number 2. My all-time number 1, though, is Hatfield in the North, The Rotters Club from 1975. If you've never heard this album, you must hear it. It's one of those 1001 albums before you die type albums. It's like there is nothing that sounds like this album. It is absolutely, it's like a work of art. You know what I'm saying? You got Richard Sinclair in here. You got Phil Miller on guitar, amazing guitarist. You got Dave Stewart on electric piano and Hammond, and then of course Pip Pile on drums. And then again, the icing on the cake, you've got also these 3 backup vocalists, these female backup vocalists, doing these amazing ethereal vocals, which adds so much to this album. We've got Amanda Parsons, which I mentioned earlier, and you've got Barbara Gaskin and Ann Rosenthal. So it starts off with this album. It starts off with this song called Share It. Could have been a single. It's so great. But then it goes in just all these amazing tracks. The highlight on the album, though, is on side 2. It's this epic track called Mumps. It starts off with Barbara Gaskin, Amanda Parsons, and Ann Rosenthal doing this like a minute and a half ethereal singing, doing these laws. It's one of the most gorgeous pieces of music I've ever heard in my life before they kick into this, 17, 18-minute track called Mumps. And at the end, the instrumentation reprises these vocals, this vocal lines that they did in the beginning of the track. It's just absolutely stunning. Stunning album from start to finish. There's no point in really going into describing really much more. You have to hear it. Hearing is believing, my friends. You got to hear this album. The Rotters Club came out in 1975. It was the second and last album by Hatfield in the North. They had another self-titled album before this, which is really good as well. But this one is what you call a 5-star masterpiece. So those are my favorite prog rock albums of the 1970s. Let me know what yours are in the comments section. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you dig the content, just press the subscribe button, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.